Questions orales, l'honorable.
Oral questions. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Le ministre de la Sécurité.
The Minister of Public Safety behaved like a true Liberal this week. He said one thing in private and the opposite in public. In a shocking recording taken without his knowledge, the minister admitted that the gun buyback program is not worth the money spent on it, that it will not be effective in preventing crime, and that it is designed to score political points in Quebec. But, like a good Liberal, he went ahead with his costly, awful program for honest hunters anyway. As he's been deceiving Canadians, gun crimes have increased by 130% under this Liberal regime. Will this Prime Minister finally fire the Minister of Public Safety? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Thank you for the question.
And I want to take this opportunity to talk about our compensation program that we launched this week. As you know, Cape Breton will be the pilot where we launch this program. People can register starting on October the 1st. We are making sure that those prohibited weapons are off our streets, but at the same time ensuring that law-abiding gun owners are able to get fair compensation for turning in or deactivating their prohibited weapon, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable-Lotbinière. Well, I welcome the Minister to read this morning's papers. In Le Devoir this morning, they reported the Minister of Public Safety has just done an excellent job of joining the ranks of those who are failing in their duties. The Ontario Attorney General's office was quite harsh, saying the firearms buyback program does nothing to address the root causes of gun violence in our communities. That's what the Minister of Public Safety himself thinks deep down. He said so in a recording, Madam Speaker, after being caught red-handed telling the truth, which in itself is a true scandal for a Liberal, and doing nothing about the rise in crime in the country. What is the Prime Minister waiting for to fire him? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety is fulfilling our election commitments. On this side of the House, we have always tried to make it impossible to use assault-style weapons on our streets. There have been tragedies throughout Canada. Canadians cannot support the possibility that people can access assault weapons. Hunters have told us that they don't need those weapons for hunting. But in this debate, Conservatives have always been against that.
Public Safety Minister says the Liberal gun buyback program is a politically motivated scam and it won't work. But in public he supports it, but in private he calls it a politically motivated scam that won't work. Talking out of both sides of your mouth should be a fireable offence, but it's worse. His job is to keep Canadians safe. Gun crime's up 130%, so he's failed and he's pushing forward with a program he says won't actually work. What will it take for the Prime Minister to fire this minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, in order to have a serious conversation about crime, we need to have a serious conversation about guns, Madam Speaker. We brought forward, as of this week, launched a program in Cape Breton where we are compensating lawful gun owners who are willing to forgo their AR-15 and other harmful weapons, Madam Speaker. In addition to that, we're securing the border with $1.3 billion in investments. We have Bill C-2 right in front of the House, Madam Speaker, that the party opposite, if it's serious about gun crime, can support and pass through the House, Madam Speaker. We are looking...
Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Let's have a serious conversation about gun crime. The Toronto Police Association says 90% of guns used in gun crimes are illegal crimes. Are illegal guns. Are they going after that? No. They've come up with this $750 million politically motivated scam. Not my words, the Public Safety Minister's words. And you know what else he said? Don't ask me to explain the logic of it. So if we're going to have a real conversation, why aren't they going after the criminals, the 90% of illegal guns that are making our communities unsafe? His job is to make our communities safe. He's failing and he's admitted it's a scam. Why won't...
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Here is what's clear, Madam Speaker. What is clear is that on this side of the House, we will put in place meaningful measures to make sure that assault rifles are not available to the people who have perpetrated mass killings and tragedies in this country. That is what Canadians want. That is what Canadians ask for. That is what the Liberal Party has always stood for. What the Conservative Party has always stood for is making these arms available across the country and doing nothing to ban them. Hunters tell us they don't need them to take down a deer.
Honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Madam Speaker, I want to commend the Minister of Public Safety for accidentally telling the truth with respect to the Liberal gun confiscation program. I fully agree taking legal firearms from trained, vetted, and licensed hunters, farmers, sport shooters, military members, veterans, and law enforcement is a waste of money. Out of the $742 million allocated for this gun grab, only $250 million is for compensating legal gun owners, while $500 million is allocated to the bureaucracy for this useless program. Why is the government focused on targeting law-abiding firearms owners instead of criminals?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, there are over 19,000 makes and models of guns that are available in Canada, legally available, that people can use for hunting and other sporting activities, Madam Speaker. What is important is that we're taking lethal weapons off our streets, weapons that have been used in mass killings, weapons that have really no place in Canada, including AR-15s that are directly linked to mass casualty events over the last 35 years, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Madam Speaker, I'll remind the government and all Canadians, assault rifles have been banned in Canada since January 1st of 1978. The Liberals have since banned some semi-automatics, shotguns, and 22s based on the fact that they look scary, not on their functionality. This Liberal government would get unanimous support if they focused on criminals, repeat violent offenders, and cracking down on the stem of illegal guns coming across our border. Why is this government so focused on dividing Canadians and going after statistically the most law-abiding demographic in Canada, i.e. legal firearms owners?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
What is mystifying, Madam Speaker, is that Conservatives repeatedly stand in the way of sensible measures to control the propagation of assault rifles in this country, specifically in the face of mass tragedies, of mass shootings, Polytechnique, the Quebec City Mosque, the tragic incidents in Nova Scotia. Madam Speaker, we're putting in place sensible gun control, and what's worse, hunters in his riding, mine, and every riding tell us they don't need a submachine gun to shoot a deer.
The Honourable Member for Gaspésie, Les Îles de la Madeleine, Liste de Gauche. Madam Speaker, the role of a minister is to bring different interests together in order to find solutions. But the minister did the exact opposite in the postal labour dispute. He dropped an atomic bomb on the negotiations by making major changes to Canada Post without consultation and without even bothering to inform the workers. The result is that today there is a general strike. No one's receiving their mail. Yet again, small and medium enterprises have to rethink their operations, seemingly overnight. All Canadians are being let down. What is the minister doing to fix his mess? The Honourable Government House Leader. It is indeed sad that the two parties were not able to reach agreement despite intense mediation, which has been ongoing for 2 years. There was an industrial inquiry which prepared a plan to reform Canada Post. They produced a map for reform, and the reform would make Canada Post profitable again and guarantee their long-term success. I encourage both parties to reach an agreement, but the government needs to move forward. We can't continue to have millions, billions of dollars of losses from Canada Post. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, Quebecers in rural areas are concerned about Canada Post's reforms because for people in rural areas, whenever Ottawa talks about modernizing, it means cutting services. Yesterday's announcement about ending the moratorium on rural post office closures is seen as abandonment. Also, the end of home delivery outside major centres, especially in winter. It's very bad news for people with reduced mobility. What will the government do to guarantee that Quebecers in rural areas will not suffer any loss of services? The Honourable Government House Leader. Yesterday, the colleague talked about how important it is to guarantee service in rural ridings, remote ridings, Indigenous ridings. We need to protect those services, and that's why the minister has taken action. Taxpayers cannot pay over $1 billion a year in Canada Post deficits. Meanwhile, we have put Canada Post on a lasting path, and I hope both parties will reach an agreement. The Honourable Member for Côte-Nord, Kawawashi-Kamash, Nitassinan. Madam Speaker, postal services are an essential service, especially in rural areas where even the delivery of medicine is at stake. But today, no one's receiving their mail because the Prime Minister caused a general strike at Canada Post. In the middle of negotiations, while both sides, including workers, were considering solutions for the future of Canada Post, Ottawa killed the negotiations by announcing a reform without having consulted anyone. If the Conservatives had done so, the minister would have been the first to denounce it. What will the minister do today to restore dialogue? The Honourable Government House Leader. Well, currently, federal services are available to help both parties remain on the track to reach agreement together. I'd like to remind my colleague that over $1 billion in losses at Canada Post Corporation is not sustainable. That can't go on in the long term. $1 billion can build countless homes. It can hire many nurses, for instance, in remote areas, Madam Speaker. The government needs to act to ensure that Canada Post remains viable.
Thousand Islands.
I recently spoke with a young father in Spencerville, and he has a trade, he has a job, and he has a young family, but he still has to count on a productive deer hunt this fall in order to provide a high-protein diet for his family. Now, why? The inflationary policies of this Liberal Prime Minister continue to drive the prices of food at the grocery store higher and higher. Why can't this Prime Minister see that his policies are making things worse for Canadians who are just trying to get by?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have some good news for my colleagues. I respect him a lot, but I don't think he's been seeing the evolution of the Canadian economy, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker, I have some good news for the member. The Canadian economy is growing, Madam Speaker. I think he should be thanking the plan of this government, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we can grow the economy. We invest in the future, and on the budget in November 4th. I know the Conservatives are waiting for November 4th.
Can we have some order to listen to what the minister is saying? The Honourable Minister has 5 seconds to finish.
Madam Speaker, you know when it's good news, the Conservatives don't want to hear it, but Canadians sure want to hear about good news.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
We're not going to join the finance minister in patting himself on the back while millions of Canadians are lined up at food banks. Let's talk about the economy. GDP shrank in Q2. The finance minister should know that. But we haven't seen a budget from him, but we've seen all of the warning signals. And so has the parliamentary budget officer, who said that it's very alarming what's happening and that something is going to break. But it's already broken for Canadians. They can't afford to feed themselves, feed their families. They're worried about the cold coming and not being able to heat their homes. It's the policies of this Liberal Prime Minister that are vaporizing any supposed savings that they're going to have from tax cuts. Why won't they?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I know the Conservatives are eager to see the budget and hopefully vote for it, because, Madam Speaker, indeed, we need to change course in this country. We need to spend less so we can invest more, Madam Speaker. That's what we're proposing to Canadians, generational investment in our future, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we build the most resilient economy in the G7, that we build jobs across this country, Madam Speaker, that we build the future that our children are wanting for this nation, Madam Speaker. The Conservatives should be rejoicing, Madam Speaker, that they have a government on this side that thinks about all Canadians and will grow this economy.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Madam Speaker, I don't know what the minister's rejoicing about because prices are skyrocketing, food banks are overwhelmed, and families are skipping meals. Meanwhile, the parliamentary budget officer called this government's finances, quote, shocking, quote, unsustainable, and warned, quote, something is going to break. Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends comes out of the pockets of Canadians. When will this Prime Minister stop his money printing deficits that drive inflation and admit that his broken promises have left Canadians hungry?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I don't know what the Conservative are reading or listening, but they should be listening to the good news that we have. The economy grew in July, Madam Speaker. They should be rejoicing. I'm sure they're going to put that in the householders to tell all their constituents that the plan of this Liberal government is working, Madam Speaker. And I'm sure they're going to talk about the November 4th budget, Madam Speaker. I can even send them some great infographics to inform their constituents. We lower tax for Canadians. We make sure we remove GST for first-time home buyer. We remove the carbon tax, Madam Speaker. There's so many good news they can put in the household. I'm going to...
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Madam Speaker, it seems that the only thing new about this government is the way that they avoid responsibility. Yesterday, the parliamentary budget officer said, and I quote, as anyone who's managed a household budget knows, at the end of the month, when you don't have enough money to pay your bills, something is going to break. Well, let me tell you what's breaking. It's the morale of families who are going hungry. Beef up 33%, soup up 26%, grapes up 24%, and a projected 4 million visits to Toronto food banks. The Prime Minister claimed to be an economic expert, yet his broken promises had doubled the deficit and driven up food prices. When will he admit his fiscal failures are starving families of hope?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the economy is growing, and we saw the last numbers, the GDP growing in July, and meanwhile interest rates are being lowered. So good news. Meanwhile, my colleagues should know, because many Conservative voters agree with it, we cut taxes on the middle class. We were able also to cut taxes on first-time homebuyers, and we also cut the carbon tax. So since so many Conservative voters are in favor, and so many, of course, of voters in general, please just support the government's agenda. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Newmarket, Aurora.
The parliamentary budget officer called our finances, quote, very alarming, shocking, unsustainable. He warned, quote, if you don't change, something will break. And it already has. Every dollar this Liberal Prime Minister spends is coming straight out of Canadians' pockets, wrecking our finances and driving up the cost of food. He said he would be judged by the grocery prices. Well, Canadians are being crushed at the checkout. Will this Prime Minister end patting himself in the back and end his reckless spending by doubling the deficit, or will he keep punishing families for his failed...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the members opposite are quick to point to government spending as a cause of food inflation, but the Bank of Canada cut the interest rates last week because they actually understand economics. We are focused on affordability every day. That's why we cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. That's why we are massively increasing the supply of homes. And that's why we're building major projects that are going to create tens of thousands of good jobs for Canadians. Canadians voted for solutions, Mr. Speaker, not Conservative slogans.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency, l'Honourable Député de Montmorency.
The Honourable Member for Montmorency, Charlevoix. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to quote a very well-known Quebec entrepreneur and influencer, $126 for 6 steaks, and it doesn't even come with sides, and you have to cook it yourself. $55 for a kilogram of meat. Who can afford that? And he's not the only one saying that, because the PBO yesterday said that the current situation is alarming and unsustainable. Will the Liberal government get on side with Conservatives and allow Canadians to eat for a fair price? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, I have some news for my colleague. We will never get on side with Conservatives. That's one thing we will never do. I wanted to set that straight, and they can even announce that. But one thing we will do is always be there for Canadians. Now, the first thing that we did was cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. I hope he will answer his constituent and tell him that the government will always be there for families, for workers, and for industry. Madam Speaker, together we will build the most resilient economy in the G7. The Honourable Member for Montmorency Charlevoix. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In order to live long, healthy lives, we need good nutrition, but food is unaffordable. There's been 40% food inflation over the course of 10 years of this inflationary liberal government, especially vegetables or healthy protein, unaffordable. Are the Liberals aware that hiking food prices like that harms Canadians' physical health? The Honourable Minister of Industry. One thing is clear, Madam Speaker. Our government understands that we need to bring down taxes, especially for the middle class, so that they can, just as my colleague mentioned, afford nutritious food. That's why we cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We were also able to lower taxes for first-time home buyers. We have also cut the consumer carbon tax. We scrap that. These are positive measures. We are taking the right action to give Canadians a good life. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Madam Speaker, once again, we have to bring up the Governor General. Brace yourself. The government has paid over $52,000 for French lessons for the Governor General since she was appointed. $52,000, that's more than the average Quebecer's after-tax income. And yet, after $52,000 spent, she still doesn't speak a word of French. So let's be honest, among fellow Francophones, it's expensive and it's a joke at our expense. Do the Liberals understand now why unilingual Anglophones should never be appointed to bilingual positions? The Honourable Minister. Madam Speaker, the Governor-General plays a critical role in our democracy. And she's currently attempting to learn a third language. She already speaks 2 languages. We should encourage her rather than discourage her. I think it's admirable that she's looking to improve her French, and her French is improving, contrary to what the member across the way said. She is working on her French. She doesn't speak perfect French, but she speaks some French, and we should commend her for that. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. $52,000. Well, that is pretty expensive, Madam Speaker. The Governor General's $52,000 worth of French lessons remind us that last year alone, the monarchy cost us, get this, $71 million. Imagine all the things that we could do, better things we could do with $71 million. For example, today, everyone's talking about the postal strike and cuts to public services. Doesn't the government agree that $71 million a year of taxpayer money would be better spent delivering mail to seniors than paying the British monarchy's bills? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Identity. Madam Speaker, this is a telling example of why the Bloc Québécois will never be in power. There is a $4 billion deficit at Canada Post over the past few years. And it's important in our democracy to have a head of state. Our head of state is the Governor General. That's been part of our democratic system since the beginning of Canada. We will continue to support our democracy. And it'd be really nice if the Bloc Québécois were on side.
After 10 years of this Liberal government, Canadians can't afford to eat because of Liberal tax hikes on food. Their food inflation tax is fueled by money printing deficits, the industrial carbon tax on fertilizer and farm equipment, their second carbon tax hidden as a fuel standard, and a plastics ban. And here are the consequences. Chicken up 11%, soup up 26%, white sugar up 20%, and beef up 33%, with overall food prices rising 48% faster in Canada than they are in the U.S. since this Prime Minister took office. Every dollar these Liberals spend comes out of the pockets of hard-working Canadian families. When will they stop taxing?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, food prices have increased, and that's why we are taking concrete action to lower costs for Canadians. We've cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. We have 3.6 million Canadians who have dental coverage now, and we've established a national school food program for over 400,000 kids across the country. I met with the Canadian Teachers Federation, who says this program is so successful, it is their #1 priority to make it permanent. Why won't the Conservatives get on board?
The Honourable Member for Brandon Souris.
Samaritan House Ministries Food Bank in Brandon is Manitoba's second largest, and under these Liberals is distributing between 60 and 80 food hampers a day. For context, that's 15,529 hampers by the end of August in a city of only 55,000 people. The Prime Minister once said Canadians would judge him by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Mr. Speaker, for families in the Wheat City, the verdict is in, and they're lined up at the food bank. Liberals have a chance to admit their mistakes and reverse course by voting for our Conservative motion to end their taxes on food. Will they do so?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, when you talk to experts who know about food security, they talk about the things that are going to make a difference for families. Things like supporting families through the Canada Child Benefit. They recommend we feed kids in school with the National Food School Program. And they recommend that we build affordable housing because that's the #1 driver of costs for Canadians. These are things that we are doing. They are part of our plan. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? These are all things that the Conservatives have voted against.
I'm going to remind the honourable members that I'm a woman, and this is Madam Speaker time, or Speaker. And the honourable member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Madam Speaker, what grade should we apply to the following statements? The average family of four is expected to spend over $800 more for food this year. 16% of Canadians fear that they won't be able to afford groceries in 6 months. Poverty and food insecurity have risen 40% in the last 2 years. And saddest of all, 2 million visits to the food bank in 2023, 4 million visits expected this year. So since the Prime Minister said to be judged by the cost of groceries, how does it feel to flunk his own final exam, the one he himself wrote?
Madam Speaker, it's very hard to explain the Conservative position on this matter when you consider that the Canada Child Benefit, increased benefits for seniors, a lower tax rate for every single income tax paying Canadian, school nutrition programs, all of those things. Every single one resisted and voted against by the Conservative Party. I would urge that member to speak to his whip to be able to stand up and support these people next time it comes to a vote.
Member for Chatham-Kent-Leamington.
Mr. Speaker, let me explain taxes to the people across the way. The consumer-facing carbon tax was designed to raise the price and discourage use. Why don't they understand that when they apply 4 more taxes to food, that prices rise? They've applied the inflation tax from the deficit-inducing margins, the industrial buried carbon tax. What else have they done? They've added a clean second carbon tax disguised as a fuel standard and a fuel packaging tax disguised as a plastics ban. That's why food prices are rising. Does that not deserve an F grade?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the things that this government is doing to actually make life more affordable for Canadians. And in doing that, I want to talk about Maya in my riding, who wrote me a letter this week. She said that she moved back to Toronto to be closer to family, which meant leaving a corporate job and its benefits behind. She was particularly concerned about how to manage her expenses around dental and prescription costs. She applied for the dental care plan, and it has been such a relief to no longer worry about dental coverage. Thank you for advocating for affordable universal health care that includes dental care. Maya is one of 3.6 million Canadians who are benefiting.
Honourable member for Bow River.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister said Canadians should judge him by the price of groceries. Well, Madam Speaker, the verdict is in, and this Liberal government is guilty. In Vulcan, the local food bank is overwhelmed. Hampers have doubled year over year. Families are driving half an hour at least just to pick up food, and the food bank is spending thousands on gas cards just so people can afford the trip. Families are skipping meals, and the Liberals are skipping accountability. Taxes on fertilizer and farm equipment stress the food chain and raise prices in the store. Will the Prime Minister scrap his industrial...
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, all the Canadians that are watching TV this morning at QP will judge the Conservative for what they fought against, Madam Speaker. They would be slightly slightly more credible if they didn't vote against pharmacare. They would be slightly more credible if they didn't fight against childcare. They might be credible from time to time if they didn't vote against dental care, Madam Speaker. At every step of the way, they fought against providing support to Canadians, Madam Speaker. The Canadians that are watching at home this morning don't understand, but they know one thing, that this Liberal government is always going to fight for them and their families.
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountains.
Canadians elected this government with a clear mandate to build a stronger and more prosperous Canada, and one powerful way to do that is to expand our access to international markets. Yesterday, Canada signed an historic agreement with Indonesia, the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Would the Minister of International Trade please share with this House what this historic agreement means for businesses and workers in my riding of Hamilton Mountain and all across this country?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, through you, I'd like to thank the member from Hamilton Mountain for her tireless work in our community, Mr. Speaker. Game-changing announcement. Canada, Indonesia signed a free trade agreement, a $2 trillion economy, a huge market for Canadian goods produced by Canadian workers and communities across Canada, Madam Speaker. This is one way that our international efforts are leading to new doors being opened, new deals being signed. This is trade diversification at work, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Madam Speaker, since 2015, food inflation has soared 40%, part of a cost of living crisis that has left millions of Canadians struggling to afford housing, transportation, and groceries for their families. In fact, many Canadians have become so desperate, they are forced to rely on food banks each and every week just to be able to afford their rent and to continue to survive. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister said Canadians would judge him by the cost at the grocery store. Well, prices are still increasing, so what exactly is the government's plan?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Mon collègue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleague asked what our plan is. Our plan is clear. Protect and create jobs and invest in major national projects which will have economic benefits across the country, including in my colleague's riding. That's what Canadians expect from their government. While there are trade tensions throughout the world, we have a plan. Canadians expect us to follow that plan, and they expect to see results, which they will see.
Our river.
And yet, Madam Speaker, prices are still increasing, and I wonder why. Inflationary deficits, money printing, taxes on businesses and on fuel, all Liberal policies that have turbocharged inflation over the past decade and that remain in place to this day. Now, the Prime Minister likes to pretend that this is a brand new government, but so far, Madam Speaker, it's just the same old Liberal policies. If they really want to show Canadians they've changed, why not steal another Conservative idea and end the taxes on fuel and on food?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, let me tell you about the impact of some of those Liberal policies. Here's a fun fact for a Friday. Since the Leader of the Opposition was Minister of Employment and Social Development, Madam Speaker, since the Leader of the Opposition was the Minister of Employment and Social Development, those Liberal policies that the member opposite refers to have reduced seniors' poverty by 30% and reduced child poverty by 38%. This year alone, we have increased the Canada Child Benefit by $345. That's over $8,000 for support for every child.
The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Madam Speaker, I have food for banks in my riding. That tells you something. Food crisis. Canadians cannot afford to buy groceries or enough of it anymore, choosing less nutritious food and eating less quantity and in quality. Since Liberals took power, groceries soared by 40%. The Prime Minister can do something. Stop taxing food so Canadians can eat. Will he do it?
Great job. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, I would really like to clarify some of the misinformation that we're getting from the other side in this moment. So when they're talking about clean fuel regulations, which they refer to as a tax, let me quote to them. The regulations are not a tax, but a technology-enabling regulation. This supports investments in emissions reduction technologies. Who wrote that? The Canola Digest. We're going to stand with our farmers. We're going to stand with Canadians to build for the future. They're trying to bring us back into the past.
Member for Edmonton Manning.
This government is very creative in bringing more taxes on Canadians. Here's why. Beef up 33%, tuna can up 19%, potatoes up by 16%, pork up by 14%, vegetables up by 13%, oranges up by 12%, and chicken up by 11%. How many food banks need to come in Edmonton Manning before this Prime Minister cut taxes on food for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, from the other side, you would think that pollution has no cost. But if we're talking about expenses of it, look at the insurable losses in Calgary after a hailstorm in a single hour, $3 billion in costs. That doesn't even include the uninsured costs that came from that event. We're going to keep fighting climate change. We're going to keep supporting Canadians. We're going to keep investing in our economy. They're trying to drag us back into the past.
The Honourable Member for Parkland.
Madam Speaker, this government is embarking on a $1 billion scam to confiscate Canadian hunting firearms. In a recording, the Minister of Public Safety admits that he can't explain the logic behind this program and that police don't even have the resources to carry it out. Public safety is this minister's #1 job. Meanwhile, violent crime remains at all-time highs. It's reckless to go after law-abiding hunters and not the criminals using smuggled firearms to terrorize our streets. So when will this Prime Minister renounce this absurd scam and fire this minister?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to note that there are 19,000 legal firearms that could be used for hunting and farming, Madam Speaker. We have prohibited 2,500 firearms, lethal firearms such as AR-15s that are used for mass casualty events, Madam Speaker.
Apologize to interrupt the Honourable Minister. The Honourable Member for Vernon Lake Country, Monashee, will be warned one time because it is very disruptive to hear those comments all the time. The Honourable Minister.
There's a clear difference, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we believe in the safety and security of Canadians and to make sure that lethal weapons are off our streets. On the opposite side, Madam Speaker, they're about bringing forward American-style gun laws, essentially enabling AR...
Honourable Member for Parkland.
Well, Madam Speaker, this government is not seizing any assault weapons because law-abiding Canadians don't own any. Ukraine was very excited to hear that this government was finally sending them some weapons of war, but they were very surprised to just receive the Cabela's Christmas catalog. Not only are these Liberals incinerating billions of dollars to go after law-abiding hunters, they're also embarrassing us by trying to send gopher hunting guns to Ukrainians risking their lives on the front lines. This is a fiasco. When will this Prime Minister make this minister resign?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Madam Speaker, I can guarantee you one thing. We will never refuse a direct request from the government of Ukraine like we had for free trade arrangements with Ukraine and have it voted against by the Conservatives. That was a pretty embarrassing moment for them. The other embarrassing moment for them always comes, Madam Speaker, when you ask them, what specific gun measures would you put in place over there? Canadians are demanding sensible restrictions on assault firearms that cause mass tragedies. We have a response to that. What is theirs?
The Honourable Member for York Durham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In private, the minister told us the truth. In public, he said his words were misunderstood and mischaracterized. Well, let me translate for him. Quote, if I were to redo this from scratch, I would have taken a different approach. Translation, the minister doesn't believe in his plan. Quote, this is a mandate I was given just to put an end to this and move on. Translation, it's about politics, not public safety. Quote, don't ask me to explain the logic to you on this. Translation, this plan won't work. Minister, Madam Speaker, Canadians don't have confidence in this minister. How long will the Prime Minister stand behind him?
Minister of Public Safety.
Probably a good thing that member opposite is not a translator, Madam Speaker. Let me be very clear. Right now, we brought forward a pilot program in Nova Scotia to ensure that the systems we put in place as part of the compensation program works. The program will last for about 5 to 7 weeks, Madam Speaker. We will expand it nationwide across Canada, where all Canadians, all law-abiding Canadians can seek compensation for prohibited firearms, Madam Speaker. That is a very responsible way to ensure that lethal weapons are off our streets.
Honourable Member for York Durham.
Madam Speaker, I admit it is sometimes difficult to translate Liberal hypocrisy. But let me tell you what their plan has led to. A crime problem, a gun problem, a leaky border problem, and an illegal gun problem. And you know what that has led to? A Canadians don't feel safe problem. And that's the minister's #1 job, keep Canadians safe. But instead of that, and instead of hiring border officers in the RCMP, he's wasting $750 million on a program he knows won't work. It is the responsibility of every leader to accept the consequence of their actions, however heavy they may be. Will the Prime Minister do that today and fire this minister?
Will Leader of the Government in the House.
Once again, Madam Speaker, we have a perfect example of the Conservatives refusing to offer up a single common-sense proposal to limit the propagation of assault rifles in our country. We refuse to accept the gun regime in the United States, where we see repeated tragedies happen in the streets. We want common sense, restrictions on the ability to possess an assault rifle. Hunters don't want them, hunters don't need them. Hunting rifles are preserved, but assault rifles...
Member for St. Albert, Sturgeon River.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety got caught on tape admitting that the Liberals' gun buyback is a $750 million scam. All about gaining votes for the Liberals and nothing to do with public safety. The minister even counseled his tenant to break the law and keep his now illegal firearm. Given the minister's complete lack of confidence in his own $750 million scheme, will he do what is right and save his reputation and resign?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, in addition to the compensation program pilot that we launched this week in Nova Scotia, we have invested $1.3 billion at our borders. We brought forward Bill C-2, which is in front of the House right now, Madam Speaker, which could be passed. With the support of the opposition, we can pass it today to ensure our borders are stronger so that we can keep illegal firearms off our streets. We also will be hiring 1,000 new CBSA and RCMP officers, Madam Speaker, and we will be making criminal justice reform. It's a combination of efforts on this side of the House that will ensure the safety and security of Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Madam Speaker, our strategic industries are at a crossroads. With the tariffs imposed by our southern neighbours, Canada is ready to lay the groundwork for a new industrial era. Could the Industry Minister tell the House how the Strategic Response Fund will help our strategic industries adapt, recalibrate, and diversify so that we can continue building the strongest economy of the G7? The Honourable Minister of Industry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We know that trade tensions with the United States have impacts on our businesses and workers. All throughout the summer, I was meeting with them. From Sault Ste. Marie to Hamilton, from Saguenay to Bécancour. Together, we found solutions, like the Strategic Response Fund, with a value of $5 billion. And all of the regional development agencies that will help our businesses recalibrate, adapt, protect their jobs, protect their workers, and build the Canadian economy. We will be there for our businesses.
In Lake West, South Kelowna.
Madam Speaker, when Highway 97 shuts down due to landslides, wildfires, or serious accidents, Okanagan residents, including cancer patients and essential workers, are stranded. Many are forced onto dangerous, poorly marked forest roads like the FSR 201. The Harper-Campbell government's successful four-laning between Summerland and Peachland now requires $24 million in stabilization work. As a funding partner, the federal government has a clear obligation to contribute a share. Will the federal government commit to half the cost so the province can stabilize the corridor and upgrade the FSR 201, giving Okanagan motorists a safe, reliable alternative to Highway 97?
Here, here. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our government is always committed to working with provinces to ensure that Canadian residents are safe. We look forward to ongoing discussions in this regard and continuing so that we can find a solution that works for everyone.
The Honourable Member for Riding Mountain.
Madam Speaker, Canadians donate their blood to save lives here at home.
But now we learn a foreign drug maker named Grifols is profiting off plasma donated through Canadian Blood Services without donors knowing. Canadian Blood Services promised that none of the plasma collected from Canadians would be used in products sold offshore. That promise has been broken. Does the Prime Minister agree that plasma donated through Canadian Blood Services should stay in Canada? Yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I thank the honourable colleague opposite for his question. Canadian Blood Services is responsible for managing Canada blood system outside of Quebec at arm's length, and it operates on behalf of the provinces and territories. As Canadian Blood Services moves forward in its agreement with Grifols, we would strongly recommend and encourage it to follow the promises made when it signed the contract in 2022 to ensure the blood products are manufactured exclusively for Canadian patients and to establish the in-Canada supply chain necessary to produce them.
Honourable Member for Riding Mountains.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are outraged to learn that Grifols, a foreign company, is making money off their blood donations without their knowledge. But the Prime Minister isn't outraged, and we know why. That's because Brookfield has been aggressively working to buy Grifols over the last year, including while the Prime Minister was chair of Brookfield. Canadian blood donations should save lives in Canada, not line the pockets of foreign companies or the Prime Minister. If Brookfield buys Grifols, how much money will the Prime Minister make?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, as I had mentioned, Canada Blood Services is responsible for managing Canada blood system outside of Quebec at arm's length, and it operates on behalf of the provinces and territory. As Canadian Blood Services moves forward in this agreement with Grifols, we would strongly encourage it to follow the promises made when it signed the contract in 2022. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, my question is for the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. In my riding of Barossa, like elsewhere in Canada, people are calling for housing, affordable housing, accessible housing. Could my colleague tell the House how his department is working with municipalities, nonprofits, and local and community organizations to provide real solutions for housing? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Canadians have called for action. That is why we launched Build Canada Homes to meet housing needs throughout the country. The program works with provinces, cuts red tape, and helps small communities build faster. We are working in close collaboration with Quebec, where local organizations are vital to getting housing built. We have a good record of cooperation with Quebec, and we will continue in that vein.
Madam Speaker, in 2022, the Liberals imposed a 35% tariff on Russian fertilizer. By December of that year, Canadian farmers had paid $115 million in tariffs, which the government donated to Ukraine. In the 3 subsequent years, the tariff has remained in place and a further $300 million has been paid to the government by farmers. But the funds are no longer being donated to Ukraine, and because replacements are not available, imports of Russian fertilizer have not gone down. So if the tariff doesn't actually hurt Russian exports or help Ukraine, why is the government still extracting hundreds of millions each year from Canadian farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I've stood with Ukraine at every step of the way. Unlike the Conservative, I'd be very careful for them to raise questions like that. I can even tell you, Madam Speaker, as the chair of the G7 finance minister, we always have an item with respect to Ukraine. I was with the finance minister of Ukraine just earlier this week, Madam Speaker, and one thing that the Ukrainian government know, and all Ukrainian, it is Canada will be by their side today, for the future, and as long as it takes, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
The Liberals abruptly announced that they will end door-to-door mail delivery. The elderly, rural, remote, and Indigenous communities will have a hard time accessing their mail. Those who work 9 to 5 will have to take time off work to get their mail. There's a better way forward. Instead of tearing down Canada Post, will the minister build them up? by reintroducing postal banking, building an electric vehicle charging network, expand its infrastructure by creating a community hub of services like high-speed internet, computer access, video conferencing, and e-commerce support. Will the minister do the right thing?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canada Post is in deep financial difficulty, and our government is clear that endless government bailouts are not the answer. We've already stepped in with significant support, but without real reform, the future of this public service and the jobs that depend on it are at risk. Our government's directed Canada Post to take concrete steps. These changes will put Canada Post on a more stable footing, ensuring that it continues to serve Canadians well.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this week in Ottawa, I was honored to meet with brave Indigenous women from Guatemala, representing the Xinca people who are fighting a Canadian silver mine at Escobal that's violating their rights. I thought right away, I'll go to the ombudsperson for responsible enterprise to see if they can investigate. They don't have good investigative tools. They don't have teeth in that office. But right now, the office is empty. Can the honourable member for Minister for International Trade inform us when the new ombudsperson will be in place?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Madam Speaker, through you, I'd like to thank the member from Saanich Gulf Islands for that very important question. Our government expects Canadian companies to respect human rights at home and abroad. Our national contact point is part of Canada's commitment to further the effectiveness of OECD guidelines. The guidelines are the most complete and authoritative set of global standards on how to run a business responsibly. Canada's national contact point contributes to the resolution of disputes. We encourage all businesses to follow responsible business practices, and I look forward to following up with my colleague after QP on our very important question.
And that is the end of oral questions for today. The honourable member for, Mr. Mantle. The honourable, York.